So out of the streaming services I've used, thankfully I still live with my parents, so a lot of these my parents pay for, so that's great. So there's probably going to be a little bit of bias there, you could say, in the sense that I'm not needing to judge their value based off of how much money I'm spending, but mostly just in terms of my time. But even considering that, and of the ones I have purchased and so on, just taking all things into consideration of what I've used, Paramount Plus is my favorite, and although it's newer on this list, it was CBS. It was basically CBS All Access, and once Nickelodeon and Viacom partnered with, took their, once they put their library in, merged it together, and put everything on CBS All Access, they renamed it to Paramount Plus, and basically you get it's really all what it's really just depends on what you're looking for. Unlike Netflix or Hulu Plus, it's not really a jack of all trades. It's you've got to be into a specific category of things. And for Paramount Plus, really, I'd say it's Western children's animation, some Western children animation, Nickelodeon stuff you all have covered, and that's the big one. That stuff was never really available on any other one consistent streaming service in the past. It was spread out all over the place, and that's really what I use it for, and what I'd say it's most useful for. It's about $6 a month, I believe, or like $10 with ads, so that's not too bad, especially if you're rediscovering these shows. But I'm also not the kind of person that stays subscribed for things for very long, right? I create an account on a bunch of these sites, I switch, so on. So, one month I might not be watching a lot of TV. I don't, purchase anything other than watch the stuff that's already purchased for me. Then a handful of months later, I'm in the mood for something, so I reactivate whatever account I have and go from there. Maybe that's the problem. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that's why there's the whole thing about it not being worth the value. If you're subscribed for a year and you only use it for 2 months, then that's pretty silly. But that's the great thing about streaming services versus, a TV service of some kind. You're not locked into a particular plan. You don't have to canceling out of anything takes, 5 seconds. You click a few things and deactivate your account. You click a few things and you're able to resubscribe right then and there. So really that's, unless that wasn't already obvious, that's definitely what I do, and what I prefer to do and what I recommend. But other than those Nickelodeon shows, Paramount Plus really is lacking. It has quite a few Paramount retro, I don't know if retro is the right term, a lot of classic Paramount movies and pictures from back in the day, but it's just not enough content there for the average movie goer to necessarily get a lot from it, a lot of substance in my opinion. Their original programming is not very good, is all over the place, and it's just kind of crap that I would skip over on TV, but some people may enjoy it. There's some stuff like home improvement kind of shows and stuff, and then other than that, I think there's some live sports. Other than that, your pickings are pretty slim. What did I put for number 2 on my streaming? I don't remember, but I'll talk about Netflix. Netflix is definitely Scott the Woz in his video on streaming services. He put it really well, where it's like there's a lot of stuff on Netflix. I forget exactly what he said, but it was something about how there's a lot of stuff on Netflix, but not a lot for me or for him or for me or for anybody. There's something for almost everybody, but there's not a lot for for specific groups of people, right? It's a jack of all trades, master of none scenario. And because of that, I personally wouldn't subscribe to it. But the nice thing is that, my parent is paying for it. So I got free access to that. And that's the great thing too. Netflix has slowly been trying to crack down on this, but they're so, slow at it, and they seem to not care. But, they seem to not care enough to really do too much about it. But the fact that you're able to just freely share passwords on Netflix, even still today, although there's limited accounts and you can pay more for higher tiered subscriptions that allow for more accounts, ultimately, it's great that you're able to do this and just kind of be like, hey, Mom, what's your password? And just using somebody else's account is just fantastic. So for that alone, I use Netflix, but ultimately, there's not enough for me personally of what I look for. And I feel like that's for most people. It's just so all over the place. And I really think that their original programming has gotten worse over time, although it's gotten broader. It's almost gotten worse in the sense of like it's even less consistent than it was before, which it wasn't too consistent before. But that's that. What was my other one? Other few. I haven't used a ton of services, but I had a few others on the list. I don't remember where they were, so I'll move on to Tubi. Tubi is good for. It's great that it's free, but man, for a free library, it's one of, if not the best, free streaming service out there. But and it's definitely worth checking out because it's free and legal. Let me add that in, legal and free, right? So you don't always have a ton of options in that regard. And although the offerings aren't good, I mean, it certainly beats public access television, right? I don't know if anybody grew up with watching public access television, but it was not good for the most part. So, you know, for being free and for what it is, it works. There's a lot of interesting and kind of cool documentaries and horror movies from like the 80s and things, really forgotten, obscure stuff. And although there's a lot of crap, there's good stuff there too. So definitely not worth skipping over because it's free, right? Google, if you're searching for movies, looking for something, you know, it'll do the job. Same thing with Crackle, but Crackle is probably near the bottom of my tier list of subscription services I've used. It's also free. I think there might be an ad-free plan there though as well. It's Sony's answer to Tubi basically, and man, it has even less than Tubi, even less kind of obscure, so bad they're good 80s movies like Tubi does. It's lacking so much. It almost seems like it has more documentaries and kind of like, I don't want to say made for TV crap, but kind of, that's what it feels like. It feels like it has more kind of phoned in B-rate stuff you'd find on television, and Tubi seems more like it's, you know, a bunch of movies and films that wouldn't really sell rentals at all, digital rentals and all. So they just, you know, they're so cheap to license out, they just were all thrown on this service for free with a bunch of ads. That's what Tubi feels like. Crackle feels like the after leftovers, you know, the leftovers of television, because a lot of the stuff, even the film stuff, feels very like made for TV, a documentary kind of stuff, and it's not good. There's some good films on there, don't get me wrong. There's some Hollywood films and stuff that are, you know, a few decades old or got mediocre ratings with B-rate actors. But you also, unlike Tubi, you don't have a lot of the so bad it's good stuff. So in my opinion, Crackle's even worse, but it all just varies on what you're looking for. But yeah, Amazon Prime, that was somewhere in between. I'm doing it out of order, but that's okay. Amazon Prime has quite a bit of schlock, which I like. I enjoy 80s horror schlock. But in terms of actual quality, stuff, Amazon Prime is surprisingly lacking. It's one of the big three, but in my personal opinion, it's lacking what I'm actually looking for. Think about the stuff that's on Amazon Prime, and then minus the stuff that you like, ironically, which, you know, for me, that's a lot of stuff. What do you have left? You have one or two original programming pieces. That's okay. That's cool. Okay, what now else? Okay, you got SpongeBob, which may be leaving. That's a extremely popular program on Amazon Prime, and it's once it was added to Paramount Plus, sometime last year. No, it was this year, sometime this year. I have a feeling that's going to leave. What else do you have left? Maybe I'm missing something. There's certainly things people like, but I think for your average, not everybody, but for your average run-of-the-mill Amazon Prime user, I kind of feel like it's more about the shipping than it is the actual programs. Unless for the average run-of-the-mill person, they might have one or two things they like, just like Netflix, but I kind of have my doubts that there's too many people that are like, oh, Amazon Prime! You know, I have a million things I watch all the time there. It's kind of one of those where it's like, well, I have it because it's jack of all trades, like Netflix, or, oh, I have it because I have Amazon Prime and I want free shipping on items. And they're like, oh, and there's a show or two. I watch The Boys, or, oh, I watch whatever came out recently, Invincible. There you go. I watch Invincible or whatever. What else? Well, you know, SpongeBob. What next? I haven't used Hulu Plus. There was one other I think that I wanted to cover here. Um, Hold on. The Roku channel I could mention briefly. The Roku channel is pretty in terms of like it seems like it has some better stuff than more higher tier stuff than some of your other freemium streaming services. Like what's it called? Peacock. That's another one. Peacock. Anyways, I'm getting the list here right now. But overall, despite Roku's content being better than some of the other freemium streaming services out there, I can't really say it's too high quality at all. But at the same time, it's free. And it used to be exclusive to Roku products, but as far as I'm aware now, it's either now or soon. I know there was either an announcement for it or it already is on other platforms, but whether it will be or is, it's coming to other platforms as far as I know, outside of Roku's own products. So that's certainly something interesting. If you're looking for a freemium service, keep an eye out for that, I suppose. But it's kind of one of those things, just like all freemium services, where it's not really like you go to the service to watch stuff. It's more like you have something in mind that you want to watch. You Google where you can find it, and you're like, oh, it's on Crackle. Okay, I guess I won't have to break the law this time. I guess I won't have to rent it, pay a few dollars, or find it in a bottom of a bin somewhere in Walmart. I guess I'll watch this crappy horror movie on Tubi. So Shudder I've only used for a small period of time, and although its selection is really good for the people that are looking for specific things, so in this case horror, I feel like it runs into the same problem that a lot of lower tier, kind of not as high quality or not as well known, renowned, whatever term you want to use, streaming services have. And this problem is more kind of in the background, but it affects things quite a bit. And that's the interface, the menus, that kind of stuff. The way that you actually use the service itself, as opposed to the content. And it's just really lackluster. The player for Shudder is kind of janky, and I don't know exactly how to word it other than it's janky. There's not enough options in terms of streaming quality and everything else, and the menus and the way that the actual site/app is laid out, at least on the devices I used it on, which, so I guess I used mobile. No, not mobile. I used desktop, and I used, like, would it be mobile or would it be, I forget if Roku runs on like an Android kernel or if it's like if it's like proprietary. But anyways, I used it on a Roku device and on the web browser, and the layout of the website is not good in my opinion, or as good as it could be. I feel like the interface is kind of clunky, the player is kind of janky and has some connection issues and a little laggy, that kind of thing. And I feel like all that kind of brought things down. But ultimately, if you're looking for horror programming, Shudder does its job pretty well, but I also feel like it could do a better job at it. Even for horror fans, I feel still like there's a lot of big heavy hitters that are missing, and I get that, because I get why, right? I get that you can't have all the Friday the 13th, Halloween's, Nightmare on Elm Street's, everything just locked in, ready to go. I mean, I own most of those movies, so I don't need it. But even using it free, which I did for a brief period of time, it's just missing a lot of big heavy hitters from like the 80s and 90s that you'd know. And I feel like that is kind of selling the service, or makes the service not worth as much value as it could be. And I get that those companies that own those want to have those on their own proprietary streaming service, but that more has to do with the problem of the streaming service model, or the problem with entertainment period monopolies, than it really does Shudder. Shudder's good for what it is, but it can't be the one-stop shop for horror, because it would have to cost 3 times as much, if not more, and even then it still might not have everything, because companies want to keep their stuff on their streaming service. Boomerang sucks. It's horrible, kind of, but at the same time, let me rephrase that. It's a really bad streaming service, but there's just enough there for me to use it actively, and that's why it probably won't be on the bottom tier here on the rankings in my tier list, but it's not high at all. Man, Boomerang is such a letdown. I want to do a whole video on this in the future, but Cartoon Network's content is spread out. Warner Brothers animation library, let me put it that way, is spread out so far, right? First, it was a lot of the stuff was on Boomerang. You know, you had Hanna-Barbera shows and a lot of old kind of, you know, classic animated animation from like Looney Tunes, Merry Melodies, all that kind of stuff was on Boomerang. You wanted Cartoon Network content, you had to either go watch it on TV or you had to use Cartoon Network's app, and you still had to have a TV service to get things through. Then a lot of the big shows came to Hulu Plus. That was great, but it was only a handful of the big shows. We Bare Bears was temporarily on Netflix along with a few other shows, and then a lot of things moved to, what was it? Yeah, then a lot of things were taken off, then a number of things went to HBO Max, and they're there now. And along with that, some of the content that was originally, and then on top of that, then you got the Adult Swim app, air quote, which only allows you to watch the free stuff through their library that's, you know, they want to offer for free to anybody through ads. And then if you want to watch beyond that, you have to, once again, just like with the Cartoon Network app, you have to use a code that you would get from your TV service provider. So if you don't have TV service and you want to watch Adult Swim shows, originally it was, you know, you get TV service or you're screwed. Then a few shows went on to Hulu Plus, then they were taken off, and now they're on HBO Max, but it still isn't enough at all. I mean, not enough in the slightest. Cartoon Network's content in terms of like old Cartoon Network shows. Old Cartoon Network shows, still you barely got anything. You got a few things on HBO Max, but that's about it. Some stuff was on Amazon Prime ages ago, but other than that was taken off too far ago to even mention it, really, but I guess I did. Hanna-Barbera and old cartoon kind of stuff that's more in like Warner Brothers backlog, you know, your Scooby-Doo, all that kind of stuff, that was available on Boomerang, or is, a lot of it's still available on Boomerang, but it has a bunch of holes in it, and some of those holes are filled in by HBO Max. So in total, if you want to, and then other stuff is still locked behind needing a code from your TV provider to use in specific apps, such as the Adult Swim app or the Cartoon Network app. It's crazy. So basically, get TV service, use that code on the Adult Swim app, the Cartoon Network app, subscribe to HBO Max for $15 a month or whatever it is. I think it's $15 a month. Then subscribe to Boomerang as well for the stuff that's missing, which would be $4.99 a month. Thankfully, it's not a ton, but $4.99 still adds up with all that other stuff. Plus, you'd still be missing stuff on Hulu Plus. Or, you know, you'd still be missing some of the stuff, that was on Hulu Plus temporarily, but I don't think has gone to HBO Max. You'd be missing some, like, Adult Swim stuff and so on. So on top of those 5 things that you'd have to do, you still probably would want to buy multiple DVD sets. Oh, and a lot of stuff isn't available on DVD either. Sorry about that. Forgot to mention that. A lot of stuff's not available on DVD in the US either, so you'd have to import a Australian. Why Australian? Well, that's because most of how do I word this? The region that has the most stuff in Warner Brothers animated library that I have found is Australia. So you'd buy an Australian or region-free DVD player or the appropriate software on your computer to unlock those DVDs. You'd buy the DVDs that you need, and then you'd use it on whatever device. And that would just be for the shows that aren't on those streaming services. Or you could just do every show imaginable, and although you wouldn't have to pay all those streaming services and TV services and so on, you have the whole problem of buying, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of DVD sets from Australia that you'd need to all either decrack with software on your computer and then like export the files, or you'd have to all play it, find a place to put it all and play it all through a region-free DVD player. It's screwed, man. Why can't we just have a service that has everything or most of it? I don't know. And that's not even counting, I guess, because like DC, there used to be the DC, was it DC Now? No, it was DC Universe, then it was DC Now, and then it left that service, I think. But anyways, there was animated DC content that different shows, your Teen Titans and so on, that originally were also on a different streaming service that was also partially a comic book streaming service known as, I believe it was DC Universe, and then it shifted to DC Now, and then they took things off, and now some of them are on HBO Max, and I think that's the only place that they are now. But even then, they're still missing a ton of things, right? There's more than Teen Titans, I know. Surprising. There's quite a few shows throughout Warner Brothers' entire span of existing since like the 1890s, whatever it is, 1900s, 19th century, whatever. Geez, my wording. You get the point. There's too many superhero-based shows and animated shows, to even count. Still too many that are missing. And yeah, HBO is still missing a ton of Cartoon Network content. And other than that, we have Pluto TV. Pluto TV, I haven't used very much of. That came out. That came out last year? That's a partially freemium service, I think. No. I think that's fully freemium if I remember correctly. Fully free streaming service, and that is more centered on TV shows. It was good for what it was, especially if you like live sports. I'm not into live sports, but from the TV shows that they have an okay selection, and there's definitely movies there that are quite good. But the problem really is that it's just one of the many free services out there. There's nothing too special separating it, besides it's maybe more reliance on TV. But it also has a lot of content that's been shifting around too much. I wish the interface was better, and I wish and the stuff surrounding the service was better, such as the scheduling and making it more apparent what's leaving the service and what's coming to the service, and things like that really hold it back from standing out from the pack and being any better than any of the other free services. Arguably, it might have better content. You could kind of make that argument. There is some good quality stuff there, and along with it being more reliant on TV, kind of separates it from Crackle and Tubi and stuff. But like I said, I just can't say it's really all that great anyways, though, because the interface is even worse than something like Tubi or Crackle, which isn't too good as it is. And yeah, it's scheduling sucks. And other than that, is that it? Peacock, last one here, I think. That's NBC, the Peacock. That's their streaming service. But despite that, I'm pretty sure, right, they don't have Seinfeld, or they didn't have Seinfeld, which is kind of odd. They have The Office, right? That's the big thing there, I'm pretty sure, that they took off. It's either not on Netflix anymore, or it's going off of Netflix, I think. Anyways, but nonetheless, that's what most people subscribe to it for. Subscribing for one show or even a few shows to one streaming service is kind of silly, ultimately, unless you're barely going to subscribe to it or whatever, because of the cost because it adds up so quickly. But if there's a lot of shows, it's like anything. If there's a lot of shows that you'd like from it, then definitely check it out. But in my opinion, Peacock just is so limited, because like what has NBC put out? I can't name two things that NBC has put out within the past 20, 30 years. There's only two big things that I can really name, and both of them are readily available, right? The Office has a million different DVD sets that you can buy. Same thing with Seinfeld. Seinfeld, I bought the entire series on DVD for like $45. It's extremely cheap. And The Office, you could probably get similar deals for. That's about it. They have some good movies here and there. Peacock does. And there's a number of free things on the service, which is nice. It's free and for a lot of content. Like a good third of the content is free, which is great. And then the rest is only behind a $5 paywall, something like that. So that's not nearly as bad as other services, but it just doesn't have much going for it because it's such a limited library, and it really shows how bad it's gotten, where every single company on planet Earth has to have their own subscription service, to the point where even the ones that are the jack of all trades, even they are missing more and more stuff now because like, oh, you just like The Office and a few other shows from Netflix. Well, too bad, it's all gone. You want this service? You want to watch Friends? Buy this service. You want to watch The Office? Too bad. Purchase Peacock. And it just goes on. And then by the time you're done, it really will be like you're subscribing for one show at a time. I mentioned that at the beginning, but I was talking more like you pay a real small fee. We're talking real small fee here. Whatever, I don't know how much. I'm not going to try and make one up here. And you rent stuff for a specific amount of time. Like you rent just Friends, but you don't subscribe. You're not subscribed to a service. You pay a fee and you like customize the amount of time or something. So it's like I don't know, 90 days or something like that. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what would be better, what would give more personal freedom than streaming services, but it would have to be available for like almost every show. And the problem again is that you're paying $4.99 for Peacock, and yeah, you're able to watch The Office, but if you're just doing it for The Office, you either should buy The Office on DVD or you should like I don't know. There needs to be more either offered by the service needs to be cents, or you need to go buy The Office. And that's the problem with all these small services. But that's it. That's all of them that I've used, I'm pretty sure, from this list that are here. Tubi isn't even on the tier list. I don't know why it's not. It should be if other freemium services are, but that's okay. That was my ramble. That was way too long, and aloha.